Eric.
Omar.
This is why we do what we do.
That it is.
The reviews. So we're going to read a review, and then, David, we have a full circle moment for Iron Culture, history, science, culture. But I think that's relevant, the intro right there, history, science, culture, because on iTunes, David, every week someone will leave a new review, and the Iron Cultists are, they're deep dive listeners. They listen to every episode. They make these references. It could be episode 31, and here we are over 200 episodes later, and they will reference it. So I want to pay my respect to this review by quickly reading it before we continue with this monster episode. I'm going to have Eric react. The title is A $10 Billion Value. 5 stars. Folks, we got 5 stars. Kai, Brandon, whoever, fireworks, it's happening. By VP983. It is a little bit of a long one, so let's get into it. And he or she says, give me a second, turn up the brightness, reframe what you know about overtraining, and attenuate your TRT. Alexander the Great, Eric Helms, and Cleopatra are on top of the pyramid. The amateur classical historian in me just wants to point out that I think he's thinking of Mark Antony, because Cleopatra's from another era. It doesn't matter. I'll take it. I am beautiful. They are hamstringing all the gurus. Dr. Eric Trexer, hide under the bed because there's a monster episode hiding in the closet. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get natty because they're coming to you every single Monday. Listen for free. This podcast is giving away what is essentially equated to billions of dollars worth of information. Iron Culture members get passionate research regurgitated, but more than that, free information for all lifters. Dr. Eric and Omar are giving away what I have calculated to be roughly $10 billion worth of personal training. Iron Culture members have an edge in any sport. Omar is the only celebrity I follow, and with that, there is Dr. Eric Helms, who adds a scientific element. There's a nifty vocabulary that the hosts use, which creates a magnetic affiliation that gives listeners a group culture. It's essentially as good of a podcast as it could be. And then they say, but you might not agree with everything on it, as there is an element of self-promotion, which is true. We're talking about the podcast right now. For sure, I'm grateful that this exists. $10 billion, baby.
Hey, man.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. It's not million, it's billion. So that's Dr. Evil correction there. I tell you what, my reaction is I want to see that spreadsheet because he calculated it's worth that much personal training, which means he figured out the average price of personal training, equated that to our hours of talking. And I just know that some really complex and highly valid maths went into this, and I want to see them. So thank you for all your time in the spreadsheet.
I love it. Can I just even the opening line gets me. Reframe what you know about overtraining and attenuate your TRT. That's the opening, and then Alexander the Great, Cleopatra. Come on. I respect it, but we want to move on. Thank you for that review. Because this is a full circle moment, okay? We have the Iron Culture documentary. We have Werner Herzog, who's just waiting to do the narration. And what's weird, Eric, he said, don't show me the documentary. I'm just going to narrate, which is an interesting way of doing things. Normally, I like to see the source material you're working with. Nonetheless, anyways, we went over as a part of our trip to the UK. We went over then to Ireland, and we got to partake in a cultural moment, a historical moment, in Ireland with Dr. Conor Heffernan, with Eric, with Aisha, with David, with a lot of people. And when we spoke about that, Eric, several weeks ago, this is the full circle moment. A member of Fortis Fitness, the gym that I go to in Toronto, Warren, came up to me, okay, and said, yeah, I'm not going to repeat or try and paraphrase everything that he said, but he's an Irishman now living in Toronto, and he was very thankful for the episode for, shedding some light on Irish culture, history, the literal unearthing of it, all these stones, the place and its relevance within the Irish culture and then the greater lifting culture, really. And it was just wonderful to listen and chat it up with him. And as I understand it, David, he's been now chatting with you, a fellow passionate lifter, about going back over to Ireland to lift these stones. And I don't want to, spoil it right here, but I understand you two have been communicating. There may even be another stone unearthed. So this is kind of crazy, Eric, because we're participating now in the unearthing of said culture, and it's just wonderful to see Iron Culture, history, science, culture. Take it away, David.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, his name is Warren McGeechan. Warren, like you said, he's an expatriate. He's an Irishman living in Canada. And I actually met Warren, would you believe it? I met Warren 12 months ago. He was back on holidays with his family. And I was in the process of researching, like I'm doing, looking for these stones. And I was heading up to a place in Westmeath, a place called Clonfad. And I was going to be heading up looking for a specific graveyard, because a lot of these stones are found in graveyards. And I was heading towards what I now know was the wrong one, because 3 days before I was going up, this dude, Warren McGeechan, just reaches out to me online, apropos of nothing, just out of the blue. This guy says, hi, my name is Warren. I'm living in Canada, but I'm back on holidays, he said, and I think I'm after finding one of these ancient lifting stones. I'll send you on a photograph and see what you think. And lads, I'm not joking. I was heading up to go look for this specific stone in 3 days' time from then. So it's like serendipity. Like this just meant to happen, So we go up to this place, we find this stone, and actually, I won't say we found it. He found it first, and I got to see it and try lift on it a little bit. But it's just amazing that you know what I mean. We're so far away, but we're so close, we're so connected.
David, come here. Wow. Talk to me, bro.
Yeah, it's just cool when stuff like that happens and comes together, because he could be living in Canada and training anywhere. Toronto's not a small city, but he happens to be training in Fortis and happens to run into Omar. And Omar only trains once every 2 weeks. So the fact that he was in on the same day is impressive. So just the number of things that had to occur at the same time, Omar looking in the mirror going, I really got to do something about this month. And Warren coming in at the same time and then connecting with you. Whew, it gives you chills. I tell you what.
One of these kind of men.
Boys, I have a confession. I look at the mirror, Eric, and I always say this year is going to be my year. Unfortunately, I was not at the gym. He sent me a DM. I couldn't make it for my knowledge job. No, he's I could be wrong. I think he does some strongman activities, and that like the natural fit. But how wonderful is it to connect with the culture? And that's why, David, we want to speak to you today, man. We want to give the proper introduction to Mr. Indiana Stones. And also, this whole concept here, that this seems radical to me, Eric, that they continue to unearth Irish lifting stones. And I don't have the exact numbers. Perhaps you would know, or David, let's say Iceland, Scotland. And it's not just a numbers game. Like, we have 20 stones, well, we have 24 stones. The point is, there's a historical tradition of lifting stones, which is very relevant to unearth and talk about. But it's sensational that it's something that is taking place right now, right? If we use the example from the reviewer of talking about Cleopatra, Alexander the Great, unearthing stones in, Egypt and so on and so forth. What's going on right now? We're finding them all over different graveyards, and I want to talk about the reason why. To say that we're at the limit right now of the stones, like it's only what? I forget the exact amount, like almost 20 or some such thing. Man, who knows? Is there going to be 30, 40, 50? Is Ireland going to become the destination for lifting stones? What is going on here?
I mean, I think so, lads. I mean, it's been quite a journey. I mean, I'm only really doing this the last 14 to 15 months, And in the last 14 to 15 months, I have unearthed and found 23 lifting stones in Ireland, I mean, literally, you're just pulling the whole culture out of the earth. You've unearthed it, metaphorically and physically over the past 14 months. And like 23 in just over a year is incredible. It really is. And I think I'm just making a start on this now, because what's happening now, gentlemen, is what I'm doing is what I have been like for the first 6 months, just driving around, doing a lot of research myself and going to find these things. But now what's happening is it's starting to self-generate. There's people starting to contact me now. I mean, literally before we came on air tonight, I got contacted by a gentleman about a possible stone in Galway, So, I mean, this is happening now almost on the weekly or fortnightly basis, that somebody's contacting me, say, yeah, there's one here, or there's one there. Since I met you guys, remember, it must be only, 3-4 weeks since I met you guys in person.
Yep.
I mean, I found 4 since then, 4 since, you know what I mean? So, like, this is happening at the moment. I mean, this is happening now, and it's happening next weekend. It's incredible. And for something that wasn't there at all, I mean, it wasn't even thought of. Like, no one thought of at a stone lifting history. I mean, and like, it was all Scotland and it was all Iceland, the Basque region, and rightly so, and they're fantastic stories. But I mean, for us now in Ireland to have this as part of our culture, it's there. It was just deeply, deeply buried, and we're just pulling that out now. So it's just amazing to be part of it.
You won't say it, but I'll say it for you. Basque region, Scotland, Iceland. Your time is over. Shots fired. We're coming for you. Ireland is going to have the most. I'm just kidding. No, but it's. I think what's really cool about this is that it shows just how important a single person can be. Because when you think about something like, the lifting culture of a nation, or the historical lifting culture of a nation, you think, there's got to be whole universities dedicated to this. There's archaeological teams, there's lots of books. You go to the library, you can find 10 different things since the 70s of people documenting this. No, right now, you're a linchpin here. And the fact that you decided, I'm going to do this during lockdown, which we'll get into the stories and the history and how you started doing this. Now you're attracting other people with an interest. And now this is going to be kind of the opening to where you have a community coming together to try to unearth their own history, which I think is a beautiful thing, David. So, yeah.
Look, thank you so much, because I haven't really thought about it like that. I mean, but when you start talking about actual culture and history, and it kind of it hits home. It does. You're doing something not just for you, like you're doing it for the culture of the nation. I mean, that's the first time I heard someone say that. It's gonna have to kind of knock me a bit sideways. So yeah. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. So, we've mentioned you on the podcast, and Dr. Connor Heffernan to mention you on the podcast, but I think we should definitely give people a better sense of who you are. Why do you care? So what is your physical culture journey? What does lifting mean to you, and what was the will to actually go out and find these stones? So first, a little more about your background, and then a little more about the why behind,
Sure.
hiking around the green beauty of Ireland, finding these stones.
My own background, I mean, I only started fitness or any kind of sport really in my early 30s. Through my 20s, I was also into art and music. That's where I met my wife in art college. And wasn't into it, was just into that kind of party scene. And I got to about 30 years old, and I was extremely overweight, very unfit, very unhealthy, and just in a bad place mentally and physically. So I started running, and I remember I could only run 100 yards the first time I went to running. I thought I had asthma. What did that pass? I was just really, really unfit. But after about 3 weeks, I was running like 5K, and then I got to a marathon about 6 months later. And after I hit the marathon, I was like, right, what else can you do? You're early 30s. You can try to do something else now. So I done the marathon, and then moved into a sport called Kettlebell Sport. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's endurance weightlifting. Got into that, got obsessed. Spent 8 years doing kettlebell sports, got on the Irish team, won my nationals, won Europeans, won world championships, set a world record, finished at the top. And just in 2019, I stopped lifting for my country. And COVID hit, and it hit really hard. I mean, it hit really hard everywhere, but we took it really, really strictly over in Ireland. I mean, it was really stringent lockdown, 14K lockdown. You couldn't go anywhere. All the gyms were shut. Everything was shut. So like the place I used to go to, the gym we used to go to for almost 10 years, all the gear, the equipment was there, couldn't get there. So I just started lifting a stone at the back garden that my wife has, this beautiful stone carving she done in our college on a plinth at the back. And then I weighed it on the kitchen scales. It weighed like 60 kg. I was like, oh, that's something interesting. So I just started lifting that, there's like lifts to lap and lifts to shoulder and stuff. And really started enjoying that. Then all my friends were online. And they were like, oh, Davey's lifting stones. Hey, Dave, I found a stone in the back garden. I was digging. I was knocking a wall or something. Do you want a stone? All of a sudden, there's lads rocking up in trucks and in vans throwing stones or boaters into my back garden. And I just started training with them. And from that, then I saw those amazing rogue documentaries about the stone lifting. And that really started me thinking about stone lifting in a historic sense. I was like, oh, it's not just lifting a rock. I mean, there's a lot to it. You know what I mean? Those stones over in Iceland and in Scotland have cultural value. They're fantastic, and they were lifted maybe 500 years ago, and they're still there, So then I was like, I have to go to Scotland. So I, with 3 of my friends about 2 years ago, went over to Scotland and lifted about 16 of those stones in 2 days, and went around all the different glens. And the one that really struck home with me was the Fina stone. So I'm sure you guys, maybe if you haven't, the Fina were a warrior caste or a warrior band of Irish warriors, about maybe 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. Very well respected. musicians and warriors. And there's a stone in Glenlyon in Scotland called the Phoenix Stone, which is used as one of their tests. So it's like, you kidding me? This is like mythology and folklore and culture and everything coming into reality, So I said, I have to go see this stone. So I lifted that Phoenix Stone, and that was a really, really special moment. And that kind of started like, right, there's a Phoenix Stone here. The Fianna are from Ireland. Surely there's an Irish historical stone lifting culture. There has to be something, And then the research happened, and we can get into that conversation because I just keep talking. So you're going to have to stop me. But I got into then the research mode, and that's when I really started finding these things,
Absolutely, and David, that's what we're here for. So I'm not going to stop you. I'm gonna encourage you. I'm gonna prod you. But I like Omar. I don't know if you noticed that he just casually dropped that he's a Kettlebell Sport World Champion. So yeah, the humbleness, embedded in the culture. But yeah, I think you definitely deserve a shout out for that. I was reading a news article just about your journey and how you went from not being as healthy as you wanted to be to then coming to the top of the sport and winning an amateur world title for representing Ireland for kettlebell sport. So I wanted to just make sure we came back to that and underlined it, because I think it speaks to how deeply connected you are to the lifting culture. And we haven't had a kettlebell episode. That might be something we have to earmark for the future, Omar. So we'll mark that down. But I will say, those documentaries by Rogue Kai, make sure you put this in the notes. So there's Stoneland, there's Full Sturker, and the name of the Basque lifting culture documentary is escaping me right now, but all three are excellent. I've seen them. So definitely I encourage anyone who's listening is interested in this to watch those. Omar.
Lads, I can't wait for us to release the Iron Culture documentary, and for some such place like Rogue, or perhaps something like Netflix, to just take the idea and do a better job. But as long as the information gets out there is what's important. I must say, David, how dare you, though? Because I've encountered too many Irish folk that do this. And as Eric said, I don't know if it's part of the culture. There's practiced humility that is highly respectable. I had a pride out of this man that he was when we were there, Eric, before you guys lifted the stone. Someone else had kind of dropped it, and then I mentioned it. David's like, "Oh yeah, like Masters." I'm like, "What?" That would be the first thing on a resume. I'll just give another quick example, David. I want you to continue with your connection here of another Irishman who's on my shit list now, Mr. Hype Train Jay, the videographer who you met, David. So Gore, yes, the owner of City Gym in Limerick, great guy, does the Rascal Europe fulfillment. Love him, lovely people. He said, "Yeah, I got a guy for you for this documentary. My buddy Jay." Amazing. He said, "You'll just explain the concept to him, whatever." I told Eric this. I spent 20 minutes explaining to Jay, because he said, "Oh my, yeah, like, give me like a full scope of what you're doing." Like, no problem. I said, "So we're going to Sheffield." And I said, "Have you heard of it?" And he said, "Yes, I think I have." That was his response. Okay. I'm just going to say that. I spent 20 minutes, David, just explaining. So here's Sheffield. Here are the different days, the different lifters, just to give him context, because I don't know. Okay. Gar said, "This is my friend. He's a videographer." This is Jay, aka Jonathan Akaha, is the Western Euros 105 kg 2022 powerlifting champion. He knew everything I was speaking about. He was just way too humble, because I asked him, like, "Do you know about this?" He said, "Yes, I believe so. But tell me about it," is what he said. And I felt like a complete ass afterwards. So this is the same idea with David. Where's like, "I do a little bit of lifting." He's like, "Okay, you're a kettlebell world champion." Okay. Like, that's not kettlebell lifting.
I just think it's in our culture. It's just who we are, lads. We don't like brag. We're not that kind of people. We just we just got on with, we'll do a championship. You ain't got to work record. It's grand. Yeah, on to the next thing.
Yeah, Jay was more interested in making you feel like you had a good command of the documentary, and he wanted to give you an opportunity to explain it. Maybe this will help you later. Don't mind me. I have a 795 total. It's all good.
It said nothing about his lifting. It's only when I met him, and then I knew Eric from like Gar, because I've seen him on Gar's. I was like, "Oh my God," because he says Jay. His name's Jay, and I know him as like Jonathan, like Akaha. I was like, "Oh, you guys are so fun."
Yes. Oh, absolutely legend. Yeah, I checked him out. We stepped back. I was like, "Mike, that's some strong guy." No wonder he got that.
Yeah. He was. It was no wonder that he. If anyone got close to being able to get that stone up and kiss it 3 times, it would have been. It would have been Jay. Certainly not me. I barely cleared the ground. But let's talk about it. let's talk about it. So you said the initial interest, it came from just practicality. You were finding a way to train with the gyms closed, your mates dropping off stones, having one in your own backyard, and then you went to Scotland, and this started the interest with the Phoenix stone. So what did the actual research look like? Because obviously this eventually connected you to Connor Heffernan, and became much more elaborate and intensive, and became almost a full-time job for you. So talk to us about that progression.
Right. So it started off, lads, and it's amazing you mentioned Connor there, because I, as everybody does, go on to Google, so I went on to Google and typed in Irish lifting stones, or stones of strength in Ireland. And whose name came up first was Connor Heffernan. And Connor has been writing and talking about these stones for years and years. I was reading through all of the documents, and he was saying that there was, I think he was talking about the National Folklore Collection in those documents, and saying that there were stones. There was lots and lots of stones in Ireland, but they were very, very vague. They were very vague place names. They were lifted at crossroads or in a graveyard, and it didn't really give where they were or what they looked like. So he said it was very hard to find them, So I was like, okay, that's encouraging. At least we know they're here now. You know what I mean? So that was like, okay, that's a start. I know they're here. Connor's talking about them. So how am I going to find them? So I was again typing in, and more research happened, and I got Peter Martin. I'm sure Connor was talking about Peter Martin to you as well. He'd be like the Scottish version of Indiana Jones. He went off looking for all these lifting stones of Scotland. Because when I was over in Scotland, as I was talking to a guy called Jamie Gorian, and Jamie said, back in 2012, he said, there was only 2 lifting stones in Scotland. 2. There was just the Dilly stones and the Inver stone. And that's it. And that's only 10 years ago,
Yeah.
So he said there was only 2 then. And then Peter Martin went off on a quest and found another 32, And I was like, that gave me great hope. I was like, okay, so look, there was only 2, and now there's 32 because of one guy. So I looked up Peter Martin's, has a beautiful piece that he wrote online, a beautiful book that's available online to read. And in his 13th chapter, he has the Irish lifting stones. Now, all he gives is the names of about 6 stones. He doesn't give where they are or what they weigh or anything about them, just the names. So I was like, right, okay, now I have Dr. Connor Heffernan saying they're there. I have Peter Martin saying they're there. And one of the ones he wrote about, a stone called the Inishmore stone. Inishmore is an island just off the coast of Galway. So I typed in Inishmore stone, and I got a story by a man called Liam Flaherty. And Liam Flaherty wrote a short story called The Stone. And this is about like an older man, like lamenting his lost virility and strength and youth, And it talked about this stone that was lifted on Inishmore since like time immemorial. I've only the piece written, I can read out small, but if you don't mind that. It's Edward. It's in the piece. It was a round block of granite, and a spark as the sunshine shone upon the particles of mica in its surface. It lay on the ground in a clear space between the rocks. All around it were bruised stones, bruised to a powder, and where it lay, there was a little hollow. That stone had lain in that place as long as the oldest traditions in the village could remember, and from time immemorial, it had been the custom of the young men in the village to test their strength by lifting it. So this was written by this man called Liam Flaherty, who lived on Inishmore. So I was right, okay, now I have a description of it. I have Peter Martin saying it's there, or Connor saying it's there. So then I did more research, and I found there's a woman called Fiona on a Reddit thread about 10 years ago. She said, there's a boulder on a rough pathway down towards Port Vale and down in Gorton Coppel that the locals used to lift that stone. It's the boulder that Liam Flaherty wrote about. I'm pretty sure it's still there. I'm going. I hopped into a camper van straight away, 2 of my friends, and we drove like the 4.5 hours over to Galway, got on the ferry, and got over to Inishmore Island. So then we headed down to this place. She said it was Gorton Coppel, so it's small and little. It's about a 25-minute cycle because there's no vans or cars allowed on the island. So 25 minutes cycle down to this place. We get to this rough boulder-strewn pathway, and it's like, you've never been at the Arnines. I mean, the Arnines is just rock. It's just stone. There's boulders everywhere. It's just rocks. The whole place is rocks. This is barely a patch of grass. So the cow one meant to know which one is the right one, But we walked down this little pathway, and then I had this little piece with me, and I saw this rose pink granite boulder sitting in a little patch of grass by itself. All the rest of the stones were grey, like limestone. And this big mica granite boulder sitting by itself beside a little plinth. I was like, that's it. That has to be it. I didn't know for then for sure it was it, but something calls you, like, that has to be it. So I got a little lift on it and just barely broke the ground like an envelope's width on the first one because it's huge. I mean, it's a massive stone and it's granite. It's really, really dense, really, really heavy. But I came back about 4 weeks later with my friend Jamie from Scotland came back and said, oh, you have to lift that thing. That's incredible. He came over. And as we were over there getting a second lift on it 4 weeks later, we meet an old man giving a walking tour. And he was like, with a couple of Americans. And I said, okay, excuse me, just to interrupt. I said, do you know one with the lifting stone down there? And he was like, oh, shy. He said, yeah, the Moline Port Vale on Doon, he said. I said, what? The Moline Port Vale on Doon, he said. That's the name of the stone. I said, it's called the Moline. That's it, he said, Jen. I said, is it the pink one? Yeah, it's the pink one down there, he said, the round one, the patch of grass. That's it. That's it. That's our first stone. That's the first one found in Ireland, you know. And he said, beside that, there was 2 little small little lifting stones beside it. And the men used to warm up with them. I used to live the big one. So like now we have this threesome of little stones. But little, I mean, we weighed the granite one. It's 171 kilos. I mean, it's huge. Like, you know, it's massive. I mean, and I'm not disrespecting anybody, but I mean, like, it's the biggest mainland lifting stone in Scotland is 160. You know, this is the first one in Ireland. It's 171 kilos. So that's immense. You know what I mean? That's immense. So I mean, I got it about maybe about 3 inches off the ground. Jamie got it up to his chest, which was just an incredible lift. You know, I say the first time that's been done in probably 150 years. But like that was the first one found. That was the very first. And then, like I said, I got the bridle between my teeth, and I started really researching then because I said, look, we have one, we have more. So then I moved on to the second iron island, and I'll tell you that one in a second. But yeah, that was the very, very first one. I mean, like it was a revelation to find it. It really was. I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but I mean, it was just incredible. Like it's like I found or refound, you know what I mean, the very first Irish lifting stone, you know? And I was like, thinking back at those Vogue documentaries, how beautiful they were. I was like, now we have one. You know, I'm so proud we have one. Little did I think we now have 22 more, you know?
That's incredible. And I can just imagine that you were scaling your level of hope and optimism for what was out there based upon every step of the way. And it was kind of like, oh, I got some articles by Connor. Oh,
yeah.
You know, the Scottish stones are now suggesting there's also Irish stones. Oh shit! There's an article or someone has written about this. Oh, there's a Reddit post, and then you actually found it. I suspect your excitement once you actually found this first stone to find more was at probably a peak.
It wasn't now that I'm actually physically shaking at the Jerry thinking about it because it was just so awesome, you know. So that started with the force. So like right, because then I went back to Peter Martin's book again, and he was like, okay, we have the Inishmore stone, we have the Inishman stone. Now the Aran Islands are an archipelago. There's 3 islands. So you have Inishmore, more meaning big, that's the big island. Inishman, man meaning middle, that's the middle island. And Inisheer, meaning small. So he said, there's one at Inishman, the middle island as well. So, okay. So off I went again. Now this time I went over with absolutely no leads at all. It was like, okay, there's a stone on this island somewhere, and someone's going to know something about it. So I'm the kind of person, I just rock up and start asking people stuff. You know what I mean? Some people, like Irish people especially, can be a bit closed, you know? But I'm the cash look, what are you going to do when you ask? Like, you know what I mean? All you can do is say no, you know? So I hopped onto this ferry, and the cabin crew were there. And I said, lads, look, and this is a bit of an unusual, but I introduced myself and what I wanted to do. And I said, we're actually not from this island, we're from Inisheer. But to see the fella asleep in the back there, he said, his name is Meehan. We called him the king of the island. Right. So Meehan was this old man, big grey beard, sound asleep, big dogs across his lap, sound asleep in the back of the ferry. So he said, go down and wake him up. He said, and ask him, I'm not going to wake up man from his sleep. So they went down and gave him a poke in the arm. Meehan, and started speaking in Gaelic. You know, this man wants to know about the lifting stone. Well, I heard about it, he said. I've never seen it. But sure, won't Paddy be there, he said, off the ferry. You know, we'll ask him. Like, he knows. He know where it is. Like, so I was like, this is fantastic. So we get off the ferry. This guy takes me over to this old blue van. We knock on the door. This fella, whatever, I think it was Paddy was his name. He was like, oh yeah, I know where that is. He said, yeah. He said, an old churchyard. He said, on the east side of the island. Hop in, sure, and I take it. So then it was me, my son, and my 2 mates were there. We hop into this guy's van, right? We go off to the east side of the island. Now, I would have never found this place, ever, right? Because a lot of these stones are connected to cemeteries and graveyards. I would have been heading towards the graveyard, but it would have been towards the new graveyard, one attached to the church. This graveyard was built in the year 1200 in a place called Kilcannon Graveyard. And there's a plaque outside that said, this church was built in the year 1200. And I would have never found it because it's way off the beaten track, about 5 minutes off this old dirt track. You walk down, and then there's this beautiful graveyard, and then sitting inside the wall, this big black lump of, he said it was marble. I don't know if it was marble or granite, just sitting inside the wall. I said, this was the lifting stone of the area, he said. And the true test was to lift the stone up and put it onto the wall. Just like, this is incredible. Like, I literally just rocked up to the boat, started asking people stuff. And then there's the second lifting stone in there, you know? So I get a lift on it, I get it to my knees. I couldn't get it to the wall. Again, it's 165 kilos, big again, you know what I mean? And that was two found. And I didn't say this, and I was in another podcast there last week. But as I was walking back up from there, then knackered from lifting the stones, red, like, I said, I should go to the pub for a pint. Could we get the ferry? Mihal, the man I met, shouts down at me from his house. He's like, hey, how'd you get on with the stone? I said, we found it with light. That was straight. He said, I just remembered. He said, I've lifted the stone on my land too. He said, we call it the Tashtall, the Sair Clit, which means the lifting stone of the stonemasons, or the stonemasons test. He said, the stonemasons used to lift it, he said, as a test of strength, see, could you become a mason? Do you want to have a look at it? Yeah, I want to have a look at it, yeah. So he just puts on as well. He said, we hop up towards the middle of the island, all on his land, and we get to this, again, a big, beautiful pink granite boulder, and it's beside the wall, and he said, yeah, the test was to pick it up and put it onto the wall, and if you could do that, you'd be strong enough to become a stonemason. And I managed to lift that up onto the wall. It was one of the greatest feats of strength I think I ever done. It was amazing. I was about 150, maybe 160 kilos. I didn't have my lifting equipment with me that time. But I managed to pick that up in front of Mihal, with a call the King of the Island, and my son and my best friend. And I got that thing up on the wall. It was amazing. You know, you felt in contact with these men who built all these stone walls maybe 200, 300 years ago, you know, and maybe there's no one picked that up since. So it was just this beautiful cultural moment for me, you know. And that was two lifting stones found. One that I thought might be there, and the second one just kind of almost fell into my lap. You know what I mean? But it's amazing when you start knocking, when you start pulling at the thread of this thing, it started to unravel faster and faster and faster, you know? It just took someone to start. I'm just delighted it was me.
Yeah, and to the benefit of everyone else. And my only question is, when are you getting your honorary doctorate in history, and how has the new stonemason career been? Because I'm sure you got immediately certified and you've been building things without issue after that official lift.
You know, it was awesome. Because when you think, like, because I was looking at the stone walls over there, and they're works of art. They're beautiful, all these dry stone walls. You guys saw them driving down to Clare, I'm sure. They're just beautiful. But these were actually like works of art. You know, spirals in them. You know, standing stones every 6 feet, everything built beautifully, you know. And I was talking to the guy up there, he said, yeah, they got paid £1 per 100 meters of that, he said, you know. So that's like, if that's all you got paid, you can keep the job, that's your credit.
Yeah, that's a lot of meters to make dinner. Jeez.
But yeah, it was just incredible. You know, I mean, and that was three then in a month. And then off we went then again from there, you know.
Yeah, it's incredible that you got on the boat and you got your first lead. You know, the things, like you said, just kind of falling in your lap. Not that there wasn't a lot of work involved, but just kind of these chance connections. It's pretty cool.
Do you know what? I kind of felt like it was meant to happen, you know? It kind of felt like it was meant to happen. You know, you were meant to find this guy, Mihal, who was the king of the island, you know what I mean? And then everything after that, just all these little chances, everything just kind of fell into place, you know? And that's the way it's kind of been over the last 12 months. Like some of them, like I found those 4 2 weekends ago. You know, I went up looking for 1 and I found another 3, like, you know, just meeting people and talking to people, because it's amazing in Ireland. Like, our history is old. It always was. We're not great at writing things down. We never were, you know, all the way along. It was always an oral tradition here. So somebody knows about lifting stones in the area, always. And it's just, you happen to come across someone, or somebody knows someone, you know, and then you're coming down, you're sitting in their house having a cup of tea, someone you never met before, and then they're telling you all about this lifting stone, and yeah, it's around the corner or 2, so I'll drive you up. And you're there then, you know. It's like, how hasn't this been found before? You know what I mean? Because I've been going through the Dukas archives. I'm sure Conor was telling you about the Dukas archives. So what they were is, back in 1936, 37, and 38, the Irish government put folklore onto the curriculum for 3 years. And they told them the kids, like 12-year-old kids, so like sixth class year, I don't know what the equivalent is over in the States, but 11 and 12-year-old kids were told to go back to their parents, their grandparents, and ask them about the local traditions in the area. Anything. They gave them a whole list of topics. Could be like the best dancer, singer, strongman, local legends, banshees, leprechauns, whatever. You know what I mean? But one time, one of the lists was local heroes, so feats of strength. So every school, think about it, every school in the country had these little guys running around 11, 12, asking their parents, and all of a sudden, the folklore of the whole country was brought together, sent up to Dublin, and now that's been digitized and put online. So, and that was in 1936, instead of 37 and 38. So, I've been up to the National Folklore Collection, I've seen it. It's just this massive, like a massive library with all these handwritten copy books by these kids writing their stories that their parents told them or their grandparents told them. Now, we're Irish, we never let the truth get in the way of a good story. all of these things have a counter the truth, which I found. And they've been sitting there for almost 100 years now. So, it's 36, so I guess like 90 years ago. And I'm the first person to go through them and look for this, which I found amazing because they've been sitting there that long, But what I love about some of the stories were told by this kid's grandparents. You're talking in 1936, their grandparent could have been 80 or 90 years old, So the story could be back from the 1850s or even back even further sometimes. You know what I mean? So the last person to lift, say, a stone could have been maybe the 1800s. And you're bringing that connection on again, hopefully it'll never be lost now because, like I said, with the likes of yourselves, and I'm just so indebted to you guys for having me on, for able to share this part of our culture, because, like I said, we've forgotten so long. We're now literally just bringing it into modernity,
Well, it's been immemorialized now on your Instagram, so there's no finer way of maintaining the historical record than social media. Shout out to the social media overlords. No, but in all seriousness, I do actually have a question about that. Is now that you've uncovered all of these stones, and you're acknowledging the importance of keeping a record and maintaining it, what have you guys been doing to try to? What are the plans for making this history more well known beyond what we're doing on this podcast and on Instagram and stuff like that?
There wasn't anything solid that I was thinking of. Literally, I wanted to follow the stories. I wanted to follow the stories and connect with this culture of mine. But it's just starting to, like I said, generate itself. That we're going over. Myself and Connor are now going over to Inishmore in about 3 months' time, and we're going over doing a festival over in Inishmore. Now, there's an already established festival. Remember, I was telling you about the writer who wrote the piece to call the stone, Liam O'Flaherty. There's an O'Flaherty festival every year anyway on Inishmore, celebrating his life's work and his brother. So they invited myself and Connor over to give a talk about the stone, because he wrote the story called the stone. And now we've been invited over to read the story of the stone, down by the stone itself. So that's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? Again, like you're saying about things coming full circle. So he wrote it. Now we're going over to talk about it. And we're going over to see can we get a couple of lifts on it. So, and I invited, or actually, no, it was Connor got involved in, but Nationwide, which would be a national TV station. They're going to come and do a piece on it. So, that'll be big because that's watched all over Ireland, And I'm going to try and get a friend of mine who's a videographer to come over and make like yourselves, maybe not as professional yourselves, but do a vlog and a podcast on it, And just keep moving it forward like that. But this is a big start for me because, like, I never thought about that. I just thought about looking for the stones. But now, like I said, it's starting to get out there more, the likes of yourselves on your podcast and onto the national news and programs like that. I'm also writing a book on it at the moment, and I have a couple of other things, a couple of little festivals trying to organise for the end of the year around these stones, because the stories of some of them, lads, are just incredible. Incredible. You're talking like mythological toys, you know what I mean? And I love Irish mythology. I just think it's awesome. And one of the stones up in Mayo has a mythological toy, about an Irish giant who used to throw the stone around a couple of 1,000 years ago, and the marks of his hands is in the top of the stone. So these stones are all over Ireland. There's just thousands. Any glacial or attic in Ireland was thrown by a giant, And Sean McCool and the Fina or the Firball, the Dagda, any of these giants that throw after they done it. And all of these stones are massive, So I've been to about 30 of these stones, and they're all ranging from at least 600 kilos up to the size of a truck or the size of a small car. You know what I mean? So like, it wouldn't be great if there was a giant's throwing stone. There was also a lifting stone. And what did I find again, going through the Duke's archives? The one called the Clochondara up in County Mayo. There's this story about a giant's throwing stone. He used to throw it like a pebble, and so the marks of his hands are the top of where he squeezed it like soft clay. And the men of the area used to lift it to see where they are strong as an Irish giant. That's just the coolest story ever. And it's there. You know what I mean? I didn't know it was there. I went up again on spec, just went up looking. And there, sitting in the middle of the village green on 4 little stone legs, was this bridge between mythology and reality. You know what I mean? There it is, sitting on his 4 stone legs, and it's the giant's throwing stone. And it's like, I have to do something about this. I have to make a festival or something. This is just the coolest story ever. You know what I mean? You know, you have your Phoenix stones, you have your stone that men lifted, but a fucking giant lifted this thing. You know what I mean? That's just awesome. So we're going to try and maybe organize a festival around that next year. And the tagline is, "Are you as strong as an Irish giant?" So I just think that would be
That's super cool, man. I think that's awesome that you have festivals, the news getting involved, other podcasts. And I have to think, I mean, obviously I'd have to ask him because he's not on, but I imagine Connor has some manuscripts that he's going to be submitting to like academic journals related to this history, which will also help kind of immemorialize this stuff. But I mean, I know that you can actually do tours in Iceland and Scotland and do some of these lifting. I don't know if they're impromptu or there's actually like people who will give you the tour and be paid, but maybe that's something that would happen in the future in Ireland.
That's something I've been thinking about. Yeah, I have actually my first, we'll call it client because I'm just inviting more, but his name is Sean Urquhart. Sean will be one of the best natural stone lifters in the world, in my opinion. He's found the whole lifting culture in the Faroe Islands that was forgotten about, and he brought that back to life himself. And he's found many lifting stones in Iceland as well. He's found about another 10 or 12 that were forgotten. So he's got another similar vein as myself. He was a huge inspiration to me as well. And he's an American guy. I don't know exactly where he's from in America, but he's coming over to do the Irish lifting stones this summer. Like he said, I was going to go to Sweden. He said, but I've seen what you're doing. He said, I have to come see these stones. They're absolutely awesome. So I said, look, I'll take a week off work and we go around together, and we do the lifting stones. So if it goes well, and I'm sure it will, he wants to lift all of them. And I think he can. He's a super strong dude, really, really strong. And so if that goes well, and I can organize a couple of maybe tour days, yeah, it's definitely something I'll be thinking about in the future to organize maybe once or twice a year, whether it be local or international, to say to people, look, we come and we do a strength day, where we do the Western Island stones, or we do the Southern stones or something like that. But yeah, so like, let's push it on. Let's really push this on. Like, you know what I mean? Let's take it to the next level. Let's show people what we got here, because these stones, the stories alone are absolutely magic. The stones are massive. I mean, you're talking average 175 kg, and that's average, and you're out of 23. Like, so I mean, these stones are big, they're big, they're heavy, but the stories are wonderful. I'd recommend anybody, if you're into natural stone lifting at all, come over. If I can meet you, I will. And I'll meet you at least one spot. We'll go and do a couple of stone lifts together and give it a go, because it's just awesome over here,
Maybe it's just the natural promoter in me, but I see bed and breakfasts popping up near these places, like a presentation at each stone telling people about the folklore, the history, and then an opportunity for everybody to lift it. Green rolling countryside, delicious breakfast, folklore.
You've been there, you've done it, you've picked them up, you've seen how beautiful this place is,
I'm telling you, I think you could get lifters. I think you get lifters worldwide who want to come pay homage, and would want to experience that, just like it's happening in other places. And I think what a cool opportunity. And then once it becomes something once that's happening, now we know it's immortal. It's not going to get lost again.
Exactly. The more people know about it, the better.
David, I will say I genuinely think what you're doing is important. And if I could offer one piece of advice, it'd be to keep doing the damn thing, because I do think you're on the precipice from speaking with Connor on something that it will lead to that, tipping point where there'll be a greater cultural awareness I know I'm not going to reveal, but here are some of the things I think Connor told us that he's trying to do in regards to the stone, because there's also that greater like cultural historical context of unearthing your own culture that I think gives it an extra level of poignancy, maybe compared to potentially some of the other places listed, not like Iceland, but as an example, what was notable for me, and you continuously brought this up, and Connor was mentioning this, was the oral history. And the question is, why are we relying on oral history? And Connor was telling us that there was a suppression of Irish history in in the schools and so on and so forth. And so you have to go down these traditional pathways, which is oral tradition of a family telling another family in order to rediscover your own history. So I think there's a whole layer here that could make it, and I would just assume in Ireland, people would take personal pride in knowing their own history, that it really could become a thing. And this is the marketer in me, Eric, because we talk about the bed and breakfast, dream bigger, okay? We need the documentary. I brought up the documentary before that. Like, Netflix, take the idea. It's fine. Okay, it's fine. We pretend we're capitalists. You could take the idea. Get this man, Mr. Indiana Stones. There's that documentary. I think it's titled The King of Kong. And it was this person that it's a seemingly innocent journey that leads to someone, rediscovering themselves, being made whole again, and so on and so forth. That's just but one example. But Indiana Stones is the Indiana Jones we need of 2023. Because really, when you examine, honestly, Indiana Jones, he sucks. Like, he's this guy investigating other cultures. He's visiting there. He's straight thieving their shit. Okay. So he sees like the rich historical artifact. Like, oh, this is like the jewel of your like a civilization. Yoink, back to my museum. And that's our connection right here.
There's literally scenes in Indiana Jones of him being chased by like 100 people who he just stole from, trying to get onto a plane.
And they're the bad people, like, right? And so that's like, I couldn't help. Here's the connection here to the start where the guy brought up Cleopatra in Egypt. Well, like, the British Museum example, straight thieving, like, King Tut, all those things is like, and Egypt's now saying, yo, give us back our stuff. So Indiana Jones, so what I'm saying, Indiana Jones, like low-key lame, Indiana Stones, someone unearthing his own culture and history that was suppressed, and there is like, a historical context there, and why thus it's been forgotten. Because the whole question that people ask, and we first spoke about it, I saw one of the comments and whatnot, it's like, why are we just now discovering it? And that's the elephant in the room. And so I think what is super cool about this, David, is you're participating in your own culture. You're bringing, as you and Connor basically said, people from the past to the present into the future, so the future can know about this. So I really do think, and how many times can you participate in something like this where people bring up Eric all the time? Like, everything's known now in the modern era. All the lands have been explored, so on. They'll just say that, right? But this is a textbook example of you doing something that previously, again, oral tradition, people knew about it, but it wasn't widely known, and definitely not to this extent, that you're bringing about appreciation and a knowledge for something that no one really knew about, and you're only just beginning, as you said, that you're not even like a few years into this. So my only advice, which isn't advice, it's just encouragement, man, is to keep going on, because I really do think there can be a theoretical tipping point with this for like the Irish people. And I know Connor's very passionate about it, and one of the things I respect about you, and I'll end on this, man, is that it's clear all the people doing it, and this is the exact right reason for it, is you're passionate about it, right? Like, Connor's not getting paid. Like, Connor's teaching, he's a professor, he's doing this on the side because he loves doing it. You, the same idea. And you really do see how passion unites people and will make them do things that are uncommon. You researching the stories, going there yourself, going to the next stone. And so there's that personal attachment, I think, to this story, the narrative of yourself, then taken upon what you do. And Eric, mentioned that the idea that when we think about history, we think it's a known fact, but it takes certain individuals, especially to rediscover history, to do it. And that's exactly what you do. So it's just amazing, actually, I think.
Look, I just want to say thank you so much, and I really, really appreciate the kind words, man. That's awesome, man. Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there. You really did. You said, like, everything is known now. Like, this feels like a modern day quest. I mean, there's a guy said that to me online there about 3 months ago. He said, you're doing something that where you're reading like a fantasy novel or something, as you could go on this quest, like Lord of the Rings. They go off on this quest and they come back like they were back again, like big old baggage. So you're actually doing it. You're actually going out on a quest and you're finding stuff and you're coming back. It was like, actually, yeah, that's really cool. It is. It's a modern day adventure story, and I'm still right in the middle of it. Like I'm still starting because, like I said, I've just pulled on the trailer list in the last 5 months. I'm only warming up, So I mean, I think there could be 50, 60, 100. Who knows? Who knows how many stones there could be here? I think nearly every village could have one. Because what I found out was when I started talking to people was this thing keeps coming up. The Sundays, what they call the trials of strength. So before, around the 1850s, it seemed to be a thing that I've come across with all of these stones that on the Sundays before or after Mass, there was what they called the trials of strength. And whether that was at the local crossroads or at the local cemetery, there was a large stone, whether it was a potting stone or a large stone to pick up off the ground. There were these stones were in these graveyards and cemeteries. And the men and women, which I found out as well along the journey, mainly men, but I mean, they used to go down and see who was the strongest. And this seems to be everywhere in Ireland, and that's where I'm finding these stones at these crossroads and cemeteries. And the trials of strength was a thing. It was just a thing that was done every Sunday, So it's like they're there. They're everywhere, man. That could be one in every village, really, So like I said, 23 found, and here's some more. But those trials of strength were awesome. It was a really cool tradition, which just died out then in probably the last 120 years. It was weird. It was like it just hit a cutting point, and the whole thing stopped. Now, whether that was the fight for independence or the Irish famine in the late 1800s, there was just this stopping point, and everything just stopped and went on to something else. So it's like you're pulling back through this time, and you're dragging this into the future, into modernity. So yeah, we really cool stuff.
What they say online now is, oh man, when I cut, I lose strength. This was known all the way back in the time of the Irish famine. People were like, you know what? Let's take a little break here. I don't want to go down to the crossroads, the graveyard, and lift and be weaker. We'll come back to that. And it was you who brought the whole country back in its gaining phase to start lifting these stones again, which is a beautiful thing. But in a serious
gaining phase.
That's right. We just got to get Ireland gaining again, and then the strength will return, and it's going to rival that of all the other stone lifting cultures, as you're showing so deftly. Well, one thing, and on a serious note, there's a lot of symbolism with these stones being at crossroads and graveyards. What is the significance of that, and what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I think at the graveyards, myself and Connor and I'm friends with now with Johnny Dillon, who'd be a head archivist up in the National Folklore Collection up in UCD, University College Dublin. And we were talking about this before, and I was like, is it because it's like the antithesis of death? It's the opposite of death, death, vitality. But then I started reading into it and exploring. And there was funeral games held, going all the way back in Ireland. Like there was funeral games held 3,000-4,000 years ago in Ireland, called the Chanton Games. So they were like, say, at the king, like the High King of Ireland or the Queen, if somebody important died, they would have funeral games. So the funeral games would have like dancing and singing musicians. You'd have jewelers, you'd have weapon makers, and you'd have feats of strength and feats of endurance. So almost like 1,000 years before the Olympic Games, they were doing that kind of stuff here, So the funeral games was a thing. And even all the way up then, 50s, 60s, 1700s, there was funeral games at, say, like an important person's death. Or there was what they call the wake games. So like, because everybody would get together, I mean, there's no such thing as social media or phones or anything. Like, you'd all get together, maybe, like from a different parish that you mightn't see people maybe for 6 months or 12 months. So these things took a while. They took maybe 3 or 4 days. So to pass the time, the men would do what they called the wake games or the funeral games. And they were tests of strength were involved in that. And they were the ones that we found down in Saha, in Clare. They were the man's lifting stone, the woman's lifting stone. And they were the testing stones of the funeral games. So that seems to be what I'm coming across. And the crossroad ones were just like in a meeting point. It was just a meeting point. Because I mean, what you say to people, look, no such thing as a phone. I meet you Sunday at the crossroads at midday, and everyone would just go down to the crossroads. and meet there, because there's no other way to communicate with anyone. And that's where everybody then would do their lifting. So it goes back just so far, I mean, you're thinking like the Shockley's and Achilles, like with funeral games in ancient Troy and ancient Greece and stuff. And we have funeral games here as well, like, before that. So it goes back a long, long way,
That's awesome. I think, yeah, I know we talked about it when we had Connor on, but I think it is such an interesting thing that there was not only a man's stone, but also a woman's stone when we went to go visit. And it really kind of turns on its head some of the typical beliefs we have about older patriarchal, society, that there, wasn't that strength is something for men, and I think it's really interesting to see that, at least cause obviously there was not a ubiquitous Irish culture this long ago. There was, different cultures across the island, but it's just really interesting to see that. And when we were there, it seemed like that meant a lot to Aisha and Kayla and the other female lifters who were there. And I can only imagine.
It's incredible. I mean, it's incredible. And that's not the only one. I mean, since then, I don't know if you've been following me online, but since then, one of my favourite stories from Lucas was a story about a woman called Mrs. Kildee. So Mrs. Kildee lived up in Westmeath, right? And there was a lifting stone by an old church called Clonowell Church. And the men were out lifting the stone one day, 4 men, and she was leaning over the wall, looking at them and jeering because they couldn't pick it up. And they were like, look, if you're so strong, you come over and give it a go. So what happens, she comes over, she picks up the stone higher than the men can lift it. And they couldn't believe it. And then not only that, she picks it up and throws it over the graveyard wall where it lay until where I found it there 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago now. And believe me, the research I put into this one was huge, because Clonowell Church isn't on any Google Maps. It's ancient, So I got in contact with a local historical group, archaeology group. And this guy called Dr. Curley said he'd meet me. He said, I know where Clonowell Church is, because I thought it was in this area, this old room church. No, he said it's older again than that. And it's actually up in the trees in the woods. So we go up to this ruin of a church, absolute ruin of a church. It's nothing left. I mean, there's only maybe about a 4-foot wall, one gable left. Thing probably built in the 9th century, And all around it was just stones covered in moss and stuff. And we just get searching around then over this. We say, it has to be by this wall. So we're looking over the wall. And then over the wall, what do we find? The one stone that doesn't have any mass in it. It weighs about, I'd say, about 150, 160 kilos. And there it is. So that has to be it. Like, that's the stone of Mrs. Kildee, because it's the only stone that isn't covered in moss. It's where they said we threw it over the graveyard wall. And there it is, And this woman then, like I said, she picked that up. And she bet the men. You know what I mean? That's a great story. And they call her an Amazonian. She's an Amazonian woman. She was so strong. I said, that's one. And I'm searching for another one actually next Tuesday, again up in Meath, about a woman called Mrs. Donahue, who picked up this stone and walked with 4 perches. Now, I think I purchased a couple of yards. Who walked with 4 perches from where it sat from the Bristol graveyard. So again, there's another stone. So that's 3. You know what I mean, that I found so far. So they said there was obviously a culture of female strength here as well, and they were very well respected for it. But I mean, going all the way back, you read any Irish mythology, you had warrior queens, you had strong women, were very, very prevalent in our culture the whole way along. So there was obviously a huge respect for that as well, and rightly so,
That's awesome. And yeah, I want to give a shout out to Strong Women Ireland, by the way. Kayla Mann and Aisha, who we met, were awesome. Strong. By the way, Omar, Kayla is sending us Strong Women Ireland shirts, and I'm going to hold on to it, and I'll give it to you when we're in Austin in July. So shout out Kayla, shout out Aisha, shout out Strong Women Ireland. This is not a new thing, folks. It's been going on since Amazonian Irish women were chucking 150 kilo stones over walls. Can you imagine shouldering 150 kilo stone? That's incredibly strong.
It's incredible, It's incredible. So that's where these stories are fantastic. They're absolutely amazing, Now, like I said, obviously some of them are exaggerated. I mean, I found one up in a place called Clonfad, where they said it weighed 40 stone, weighed 42 stone weight, where you'd be like 250 or 260 kilos. But I got up there, we brought weighing gear with us, and it weighed only 190 kilos. Then where this guy picked it up, brought it from a house 100 yards away and brought it into the graveyard, walked it from his house to the graveyard. And it was an egg-shaped stone. They called the Clonfad stone. And for 190 kilos, that's what we made it. And that was the one that Warren actually going all the way back again. That's the one that Warren found. But I mean, 190, we think the most one is 187. You know, the stone they used, the Villot stone and the Arnold Strongman Classic, that's 186. And this dude, Paddy Langham was his name, just picked up this stone and took it for a walk. You know what I mean? All to 90 kilos. You know, and it's there. And we don't want to found it. You know, I say Warren found it. We found it together. And there it is, you know. And believe me, that is heavy. You would get that stuff off the ground. I couldn't make the ground with it. Warren got it about 6 inches off the ground, which is probably the first person lifted since him, you know. And I read up then about him, and it says, back in 1937, the kid who wrote that story, right, he got it from his dad. But the kid who wrote the story said this happened 150 years ago. So that's 150 years back from 1937 was when this dude picked up that stone. And it's been sitting there ever since, you know, and Warren was the first guy to pick it up since, this mid-1700s?
Yeah, 1700s, that's wild, man.
Absolutely awesome, like, you know. But I said, all of these stones, that's every single one of them has its own story. Every single one of them has its own history. And every single one of them are just fascinating, you know, some more than others. But I mean, they're all just incredible stories attached to them. You know, I talk about it, I sit here and talk for the next 6 hours about these stories, you know what I mean? But I pour the head out of everybody. But they're just absolutely incredible. You know, they're amazing stories. They really are.
Well, yeah, I think, like Omar said, it's truly important what you're doing. I could see the meaning that it had for everyone who was there when we got to, you know, be the invited guests from foreign lands into your Irish lifting culture, and it would, yeah, it just to see what it meant to those people. I know that it'll mean that to many more. I'm excited for the future. I know not only are you going to uncover more stones, but you're doing more to promote it. And I think, like Omar said, there's going to be enterprising people who, so long as they're respectful of making sure it's done for the right reasons and done in a way that is egalitarian, I think it's going to be a great thing where people can come visit and partake in that history. Because like you guys were saying, like, we think we've got everything figured out in modernity, but the amount of history that's actually been lost and may never actually be refound is something that I was actually recently reflecting on in Mexico. And this will be a very brief tangent, but we went out to Teotihuacan, which is a couple hours, I believe, east of Mexico City. And Teotihuacan is a Nahuatl word, so that's Aztec for City of the Gods. And the reason why they named it City of the Gods is because they found this city that had been built and was abandoned like 200 years prior, like in, I think, 300 AD. And I'm probably not getting this perfectly right, so apologies to anyone. I don't mean any disrespect, but the Aztecs thought, no way humans built this. It must have been built by the gods, so they named it that. But the actual city's name, we don't know, because they're still trying to figure out which of the tribes in that part of the Americas were the ones who found it and named it. And they think it was the Otomé, but this is actually like a 150, 200,000 person populated 22 kilometer city that had a multicultural, like a bunch of different tribes together doing a trading system. And that history is it's still being uncovered. When you go to visit Teotihuacan and see it, there's active archaeological sites going on there, and they're reconstructing things. So history is not set in stone, pun intended. And I think it's just fantastic that you're helping us in the modern world connect with it, because understanding who we are, helps us move forward and hopefully not repeat mistakes and preserve elements that should be preserved. Because there was probably some point where there was more respect for say female strength a couple hundred years ago than there was, say, like in the early 1900s or the mid 1900s. So like, things, unfortunately, that shouldn't have to come full circle sometimes.
Well said.
No, exactly. And a good point well made, yeah, definitely, and just like I said, the respect that was there, and I said it should be there definitely in every culture, But like I said, yeah, there's some great ones, there's some great tales. And like I've reconnected more with my heritage and culture on this journey than I ever thought I would. I'm actually in the process of learning Irish now, that I never would have done before, because it's brought me closer to who I am as an Irish person. You know, and I don't mean that in any kind of facetious way. It really has, because the stories. I mean, with all these and meeting the people and all that, it's just been amazing. I mean, like the one up in Den, the flag of Den that was used as a mast rock. You know, and a mast rock means, like, back in the 16th, 17th century, we had penal law, which means that we couldn't practice Catholicism. We couldn't speak Irish. I think Connor touched on that in your podcast. But they were saying mass, like saying Catholic mass in graveyards at stones, you know, using the stones on altar. And this stone was used as a mass rock. You know, it was also used as a strength test. But so that got me back in contact with these persecuted people back in the 16th century, you know. And then it got me thinking, it got me researching. So, like I said, I figured out more about myself and my heritage in this last 12 months than I ever thought I would. And it's because of these stones, you know, it is. And they're very important. And they're, like I said, they have cultural value. They're not just, you know, like hokey men do hokey things, like Connor said. You know, they have cultural meaning. They have cultural value. And they're heritage, and they're who we are as people. They're not just stones, they're touchstones, you know, to who we are.
Well said. Powerful stuff. Omar, I don't know if you have anything, but I do want to open the floor just to make sure that anything we haven't covered, you can bring up, David, because obviously you're the expert here. You're the one who's been in the fields, doing it and finding these stones, digging in you know, using the child labor of archaeology from the 1930s to figure out this stuff, you know, and all the odd connections to actually figure out what's going on. What do you think? Is there anything that we haven't asked the right questions for to really give the listener a view?
It's been great. I mean, touched on the heritage and the culture and the historical aspect of them. You know, we've had a couple of stories about them. You know, we've had the mythological ones. We've had, you know, we pretty much hit on the base, I think. So, I mean, it's to chat to you guys about. And I just want to say again, see the caliber of people you've had on this podcast, and to be invited on is a great honor, and I really, really mean that. You know, so as an Irish person, it's hard for us to say these kind of things, but I really, really appreciate you for having me on. And seriously, guys, thank you so much.
It's our honor, and you are 100% right there up. You're the type of caliber of guest that it's a no-brainer having you on doing the work you're doing. It truly does embody what we're trying to promote here at Iron Culture. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. I know it won't be the last time we talk, and I suspect there's going to be some point where Omar's healthy enough and we're back in Ireland where he's going to lift some stones too. We just got to keep the man sleeping and well fed and not getting ill. He's, you know, we'll bring his bubble out there and he can, you know, kind of hamster wheel his way up to the stone. We'll let him out briefly. He'll lift it. He'll be sick for the next 3 days, but he will lift that stone and show his strength, not an immune system, but his strength physically, which he definitely has. So no, I appreciate you being on.
No, guys. I mean, anytime you're over, anytime at all, hit me up. We go lift some stones and have maybe a couple of pints of Guinness. Sounds like a plan.
That's what I was going to say, David. I've broken my back for far less. I would love to do it while lifting stones. That 190 kg has got to go down. Okay, we got that farm boy strength. I was going to say that a few things. I feel terrible because, David, you're the man, and the honor is all ours. This started as an episode or a series for us of potential exploitation, because what Eric and I first heard, we heard stone. And we thought,
we wasted.
We're looking to build a very real, tangible pyramid for Iron Culture, because we always say, David, we stand atop the pyramid. And so when we heard free stones or just stones, it's like, well, great, we have the source material. Then we felt terrible about the idea. So now we're just doing a full circle moment. And I can't help but feel that, you know, in all seriousness, somewhere larger like a Netflix or some sort of network, this story writes itself. I think it's inherently fascinating. I think it's also important, and it's nice where there's the intersection of those two. So something that is culturally important and significant in some meaningful way, but then there's a narrative arc that would get people attached, and that's where I see that crossover. So when I keep saying, man, just keep doing what you're doing, and we both think that it's super important, we mean it. And when they take over, okay, when they make it a tourist destination, when Disney comes over and they make a god-awful, animated adaptation, and then 20 years later, a live adaptation that's even worse, and they get everything wrong from a historical perspective, all we ask is when we visit Ireland, if we can maybe get a pint or two, and that's all. That be it, and we would be content, because to do the lifting, do the damn thing, do the lifting, and then drink and kind of participate. And I think that's the part that also resonated with me real quick, Eric and David. It's just, I love that you're participating in a lifting culture that has been going on for centuries. Because we talk about iron culture for all lifters, but it's amazing to see that some aspects of lifting, think about these modern implementations that were created specifically to be lifted. This was something that people would do back in the day in order to test strength. Like, there's really like a whole bunch of different things. And so it's that lineage of lifting culture carrying into the present. We love it, man. We're going to link everything in the description. We look to hearing more. And that's what I thought. I thought it was around 20 when we went down. I thought it was like 19. Because, man, he's already at 23. Who knows how many. So follow along on his journey to discover more. If you like iron culture, if you want to leave a rating review, maybe you don't like it, give it a 0 star. We don't care, okay? We're top the pyramid. We're impervious. Leave a rating review. We'll do our best to read it. This is the part of the review when they say there's an element of self-promotion. Yeah, gosh darn right, we're fighting David. There's like sex with Emily, sex with some other like doctor. That we're battling in health and fitness. There's only 3 fitness podcasts in the top like 100 or 200. We're one of them, and then it's all about usually sexual health. So we're fighting. Okay, we're fighting the battle.
Do it, fight.
Yeah. That's why it was weird. Eric and myself have been working on a alternative version of The Hobbit, where Bilbo wrote there and back again, and we wrote. We're not going to say what the name is, but anyways, it's something a little different. Just to try and break into that. So go ahead and leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for everyone listening to another episode of Iron Culture. We're back every single insert date here, and we'll see you from now until the end of time. Until next time.